The Effects of Industrial-Caused Global Warming by Jacob Hooper, Kevin Medina, Will Richards, Andrew Eisenhunt, and Jackson Carey. So the historical background in industrial causes of global warming can be shown in a statistic by Farhan Ahmed, PhD in Finance at Greenwich University, which states, greenhouse concentrations are significantly higher than they were at the beginning of the industrial era, meaning atmospheric CO2 concentrations have reached 409.8 parts per million in 2019, higher than at any point in history in at least the past 800,000 years. In a graph by Mohammed Kabir, a postdoctoral researcher in bioinformatics at Thal University, Bakar, shows that the industry creates 29% of all direct and indirect emissions. So the rise of industry has been one of the main causes for increased temperature on the earth because it creates the high percentage of direct and indirect emissions, according to Mohammed Kabir. In a graph by Guy Stewart Callender, a professor of physics at the Imperial College of London, shows that from 1880 to 2000, that the global surface temperature rose 0.6 degrees Celsius. All in all, this shows that the main problem is the high percentage of direct and indirect emissions from industries and their processes, which increase CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere and raise the global surface temperature.
The first solution to reducing the amount of carbon that is released into the air from this is to find more efficient ways we can use the energy uses. According to the United Nations study article titled Actions for a Healthy Planet, the best ways you could reduce this is reduce, use, recycle, change our transportation methods, save energy at home, and use less plastics. Reduce, reuse, and recycling is effective because it reduces our waste and promotes a healthier lifestyle. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, the most effective way to reduce waste is to not create it in the first place. So the best thing we can do is reduce the amount of products you buy, try to reuse as much as you buy, and recycle as much as you can. Some good things you can recycle are things like glass, paper, old batteries, and older electronics. The second way the UN recommends is to change our transportation methods. This includes things like walking or biking to places closer to our house instead of driving. This also includes how we transport our goods. According to the UN, this could mean using more biodiesel or electronic/hybrid vehicles. The third way is to save energy at home. According to the New Hampshire Department of Energy, these include turning down your thermostat, wash and dry your clothes in bigger loads, and completely turn off electronics when they're not in use. The final way is to use less plastics. According to the Hennepin County Climate Action, about 4 to 8% of the world's oil is used to produce plastics. Reducing our plastic would also reduce our oil consumption, therefore our carbon emissions. We could also make stuff more bio-friendly and biodegradable if they are wasted. Some limitations for reduce, reusing, and recycling is that not everything can be recycled, and most of the plastics nowadays are one-time use, and after that they're thrown away. Traveling long distances could be difficult without things like a car, and it costs a lot of money to recycle things and making everything environmentally friendly.
The second solution is alternative energy sources, or renewable energy. Some renewable energy is naturally replenished, meaning it eventually comes back over the natural cycle of the earth, and it has less impact on the atmosphere, meaning less carbon dioxide, and it has a diverse energy profile. For example, according to the U.S. Energy Administration, most of the way America gets their energy is through industrial processes such as natural gas and electric power and coal. While renewable energy has a diverse profile, meaning wind power, solar power, and water power. Some implications of this is mainly less carbon dioxide, meaning a healthier atmosphere, which would lead to improved public health and less lung diseases. And a job creation. People, instead of having industrial jobs, would have jobs that have to maintain these renewable sources, such as more durable panels and larger rotors. Some limitations of this is that they're expensive. It costs a lot to maintain and build solar panels and wind turbines for money, and limited availability. Not everywhere has as much sun as some places, and limited technology, which would limit how much energy efficiency we could have. This graph from the German Environmental Agency shows that renewable energies saved 76% of what would have been caused by 76% of carbon dioxide, which would have been caused through industrial processes, which slowly over time saves the earth.
So our third solution, the carbon tax, according to the Center for Climate and Energy Solutions, is when governments say a price that emitters must pay for each ton of greenhouse gases they produce. This is a good temporary source of revenue for the government and prevents climate change since it encourages emitters to use renewable energy in order to avoid the tax. Similarly, emission trading systems, or sometimes called cap and trade programs, according to Hannah Ritchie, PhD in geosciences, and Paulo Rosada, PhD in data analysis, is when governments require companies to buy certain licenses that allow them to emit a certain amount of greenhouse gases. The prices of licenses are determined by a trading system that fluctuates over time, but it mostly increases. This also discourages companies from emitting greenhouse gases and encourages them to switch over to renewable energy. However, both of these act as deterrents and don't reduce pollution directly. So in this graph, you can, by Hannah Ritchie, PhD in geosciences, and Paulo Rosada, PhD in data analysis, shows that the carbon price around the world and which countries have them. Currently, Sweden has the highest carbon price with about $55, and Poland has the lowest, which is less than 10 cents. And in this graph, it shows the emission trading system prices around the world and which countries have them, with Bulgaria having the highest, which is about $37, and the US having the lowest, which is about $1.44. As you can see, most of these countries are concentrated within Europe. However, some limitations of the carbon tax, according to Neotota P. Omdier, environmental health and safety specialist with over 4 years of experience implementing EHS systems, is that carbon tax might not be politically feasible or have much support, especially in countries or by companies that rely on petroleum or coal power, and that it might have disproportionate impacts on lower income communities / countries, since the carbon tax is a uniform and flat price. Lower income communities and countries will have to spend more of their budget on energy. What's the implications of the carbon tax is that it would accelerate technological development and boost economic development for green technologies such as renewables, and industries, mainly manufacturing, would likely leave countries in order to avoid the tax, because if they don't, they would lose out on cheap power and be forced to increase their costs.
The best solution we have selected is alternate energy sources. By switching to these more renewable sources, we will no longer have to worry about our energy consumption or the tax of fossil fuels. Instead, we will eliminate the problem completely. So some of the problems with other solutions, when it comes to more efficient carbon use, it still is using carbon, just less of it, which isn't as helpful as not using it in total, only lessening the problem. When it comes to carbon tax, it tries to limit the carbon use, but this isn't as helpful because in certain areas, people can have higher income and it might not matter as much in certain countries. The only issues when it comes to switching to renewable energy is some feasibility, because it does take up a lot of size and energy to create in the first place, and this can be expensive, because it is the total changeover from what we are already on. And thank you.
So I'm sure you would have been in time. I didn't start timing until the second person. Can you turn that off?